Hi everyone, cross stitch day today. I'd like to share with you how to get started in making a basic cross stitch. So we're going to need our embroidery scissors, a stitch marker, your tapestry needle, so one with a reasonable eye and the blunt tip, a hoop, your Aida cloth, your chart and your threads. So this Aida cloth is 14 count, so the holes, remembering that each square is one stitch, the holes are reasonably big, which make it nice for a beginner. With our chart, this is one that's free off the internet. They do have the colours that they recommend to make it exactly like that. I don't have those colours in my stash, but what I do have is something reasonably similar, so I'll do for today. Now your chart is printed on a grid. I don't know if you can see the grid lines in there, but each square represents a stitch, so that equals the holes in our fabric. What we need to do is find the center of our chart and the center of our fabric so that they match up. There's a couple of reasons that we do that. One is so that we don't run out of fabric. If we didn't find the center of our fabric and we started our cross stitch to the side, we're going to run out of room and not be able to complete our project. So your chart will have an arrow at the top and an arrow on the side. Run your fingers down until they meet. That is your center. Now you can, if you want to, mark that center with a pencil. Just set that aside for the moment. We then need to find the center of our fabric. So fold your fabric in half and just press it. And turn and fold in half again. And give it a finger press in the center. Then we want to take our stitch marker and just pop it through like that. That's your center. So pop your hoop down, put your fabric over the top. This is a spring one. We just pop that in, push it down and release and hope it stays in the middle. And that's ready to go. You don't have to use a hoop, but I prefer to. Now charts come in colours and symbols, and some charts just have the symbol. So you need to match up this 554 colour. If it didn't have the purple background, you'd need to look for that number and see that it's purple, and that is the section that you would make in that colour. So we're actually going to start with the cross, and as I said before, I'm not following these colours, but I've decided to make my cross a green. So stranded cotton, which is what you'd use for your embroidery cotton, is strands of 6. So as you see, I just twisted that and they came apart. So measure a length of about 1/2 metre. And cut it off. And then back here where we've got our strands, you want one strand. Now 1/2 metre sounds like it's quite long, but we're actually going to double that over. So hold that strand in between your thumb and finger of this hand, pull, and you can see underneath, I'm going to show you this, it's all going to bunch up, but that's okay. keep pulling. And then just run your thumb and finger and that will straighten out. So we don't want this big, what's left, the big thick strand, we don't want that one for now. We want this single strand. Put one end in your needle and pull it all the way through until you have your two tails at the end. So now we pick up our hoop, and what we need to do from our center is count out to the end. So each big square is 5. So what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we want to go 8 to the left of our center. So here's our center. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is where we're wanting to start. So now I'm going to pull it through from the front just because it's marked my spot and it's easy for me to see, but I actually need to come up from underneath. So pull that, but leave a tail. And now that we know where we're starting, we can actually get rid of that because that's going to get in our way. So we don't need it anymore. Leave the tail about that long. Hang on to it so you don't pull it through all the way. On the other side, we're wanting to go diagonally across that square. So we go down. We then need to go straight on the back. But when we do this stitch, we want to catch that tail like that. So we're going to actually stitch over that tail to secure it. Flip it over again on the front. We're going diagonally into this hole. Flip. On the back, catch that tail but go straight. Front again. So with cross stitch you want all your stitches that are on the bottom to go one way, and it doesn't matter whether they go diagonally left or diagonally right as long as they're all the same. We need to do 8 stitches to get back to the middle, catching that tail in at least 4 or 5. That's 8, so that was our center, which on our pattern that brought us back to here. So we know that that's 5, 6, 7. So we'll do another 7 stitches. Okay, there's our 15 stitches. Now looking at our pattern, we've just done this first row. We need to come back 1 and do another row until we're 1 short at the end. So the way we can do that is to go straight down on the back. We can actually cross this one over because that's going to be on the top. Then we come straight down again. But this time we're going to come to the next row to continue along. And by doing that, it keeps our stitches on an angle on the front, but it also has stitches straight up and down on the back. And you can see that when I pull my thread through, I'm not pulling it super tight. It's a nice firm tension. So I've just done the second row. We need to look at our pattern again, and we come down a row this time. Now I forgot to mention before, if you keep losing your spot, just grab a marker and you can cross out as you go. That will help you keep track of where you're up to. That's 11. And now we start going back the other way to cross, because we've finished this section here, the colour that we were working on. We can now go the other way and cross everything over. That is that section of our heart completed. Now you can either choose this section at the bottom, or you can do the purple up the top. But because we start from the centre, whatever we have done here is what we grow on. It's just an easier way to do it. So I'm going to do the one down the bottom. So now to start this one off, we've got a couple of options. We can start the way we did with this one and come through. That's one stitch in, so we need to come in down here. So we can, oops, we can pull that through to there and hold it, and then secure it with going over it on this side and catching it in, or we can just run it through the existing stitches like that. Pull it through to about there and start our stitches if our needle doesn't fall out. Now this one, I've got my thread a little bit long, mainly because that's what was there. There wasn't any point in me cutting it, but the risk of working with a really long thread is it can tangle, and then you end up with a big mess, and you don't end up saving yourself any time at all. So you can see I'm just going the same as we did with the green. I'm doing all one way first, and on our chart we're one stitch in. I haven't bothered counting this one. Sometimes you need to count it, and sometimes you can just work it out and say, oh well, I'm 1 or 2 stitches in from the last one that I did. But I always go back and double check my count, because you run the risk, if you've miscounted up here and you're basing this work on that, everything has to add up and work in together. Otherwise you're going to end up with the whole thing being a little bit out of whack. So always don't do too much before you go back and check your count. So you can see I've been holding this hoop in my left hand and doing the stitches just with my right. There is another way that you can do it. Can be a little bit tricky. It depends on how big your hoop is. You can lean it up against your table, and half against your table, half against your body, so that you've got one hand, my right hand is now underneath. I'm balancing it with my left, and I can just go between my left and my right. Now if you haven't got a very big hoop, this doesn't work very well, because you can see my hoops moving around, and it does get quite tricky to get your stitches in and stop your hoop bouncing all over the place. But it is another option of a way to do it. does make it faster with having one hand underneath and one hand on top, if you're not spending half that time chasing your hoop. So our pink, we come in one stitch and we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I need to come up there. Use your needle to find your spot, and then that shows you where you've got to be on the other side. And again, I'm just going to run my needle through those existing stitches. So if you're not going to use a hoop, you need to be very careful with your tension. And make sure your stitches lay nice and flat. With a thicker cloth like the Aida cloth, a hoop's not as important, but with something like a soft linen, then I think you really need to use a hoop. Six and 7. Then we miss a stitch and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So earlier I said about keeping or trying to keep all your stitches, and again we're just going to trim that tail, but you're trying to keep all your stitches vertical on the back. But us, you could work this one of two ways. You could skip a stitch and go straight across, or you could come back and work that bit. So it really is personal preference. I'm actually going to skip a stitch and go the whole way. So I'm going to go diagonally on the back to get across to that next stitch, so that I can also go diagonally on the front. Now referring back to our chart, when we did this bottom row, we jumped one and continued on. Coming back this way, I'm not going to do that because that would be jumping 3, and that's a bit too far. Same as up here where I've got 5. You don't want to run a thread from here to here. It will show through on from the back. So I'm actually going to do a step up and do these 4 stitches first. So that's the first half of the pink done. Looking at our pattern, this is a mirror image of this side. So we're going to cross our first stitch, which on the back of our work will give us a cross here. And that's okay. Everything else is nice and straight. Then we're going to come up. So we come straight up on the back, but on the front, that puts us in the right position to start on this row for this stitch here, and to make our angled stitch for the first cross. Now with that you could make it into a bookmark. You can cut out the outside, make a little cushion, there's a lot of things that you can do with your end of your cross stitch.